Welcome to our new series, Heaven's Testimony. I am Etta James. You might think that passing away brings an immediate, quiet peace. But when you look back at the earthly life you left behind, the blues have a way of following you, even up here. Down there, you knew me as the fierce, unshakable diva draped in glamour, commanding the stage with unmatched power. When I sang At Last, back in 1961, my voice carried the weight of a woman who thought she had finally conquered the world. It was a masterpiece of soul, a song so pure that it defined romance for generations. But from this heavenly perspective, looking past those brilliant spotlights and the roaring applause, I can finally show you the dark, devastating reality that was quietly consuming me from the inside out. For decades, I managed to hide the deep scars of my brutal life behind my legendary voice. But as the curtain began to fall on my final years, the music stopped, the money vanished, and I found myself trapped in a tragic nightmare of addiction, severe mental decline, and a heartbreaking family betrayal. This is my true, raw testimony, the painful destruction of Etta James. To understand the darkness of my final years, you have to understand the trauma that birthed my voice in the first place. I was born Jamesetta Hawkins to a 14-year-old mother who didn't know how to care for me. I never knew my biological father, though I always believed he was the notorious pool shark, Minnesota Fats. Raised by foster parents and constantly abandoned, I turned to music as my only sanctuary, my only escape. By my 20s, I was a global superstar, but the deep-seated emotional neglect left a massive void that fame could never fill. I turned to heroin, embarking on a brutal, decades-long battle with addiction that drained my bank accounts and landed me in prison and psychiatric wards. I was a survivor, and I conquered my demons multiple times, but the physical and psychological toll of those wild years was a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode just as I reached old age. By the late 2000s, the fierce Etta James that everyone knew began to slip away. On stage, my powerhouse performances became worryingly erratic. I would suddenly forget my own lyrics, lash out unpredictably at the audiences who loved me, or become completely disoriented mid-song. The devastating diagnosis came shortly after. I was suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease and dementia. The woman who could once remember every subtle note of a complex blues melody was now losing her grip on reality. My own mind was becoming a terrifying prison of confusion and fear. To make matters worse, my physical health rapidly collapsed. I battled severe leukemia, recurring antibiotic-resistant infections, and was soon confined to a wheelchair, entirely dependent on others just to survive. The independent, fiery queen was suddenly completely vulnerable. But the physical pain in my bones was nothing compared to the emotional agony that defined my final days. As I lay bedridden, completely unable to speak or defend myself, a vicious, toxic war erupted within my own home. My husband of over 40 years, Artis Mills, and my two sons, Danto and Semedo, became locked in a brutal legal battle. The fight wasn't about my health, my comfort, or my care. It was about my money. At stake was my million-dollar estate and the legal control over my medical decisions. My sons claimed their stepfather was unfit to manage my affairs, while my husband argued he was carrying out my true wishes. As the court dates piled up, my private medical tragedies were dragged into the public mud, leaving me as a mere pawn in a bitter family feud over cash while I lay dying in my bed. On January 20th, 2012, just days away from my 74th birthday, I took my very final breath at a hospital in Riverside, California. I died from complications of leukemia, surrounded by the very family that had spent my final months fighting over my empire. I left behind an unshakable musical legacy that inspired everyone from Janis Joplin to Adele, but my tragic final years serve as a sobering, haunting reminder of the dark underbelly of fame. I spent my entire life singing the blues for the world, but the saddest blues I ever experienced were the ones played out in the heavy silence of my final days. I was fierce, I was raw, and despite the tragic end, I am entirely unforgettable. If my voice ever touched your soul, subscribe to Her Echo to ensure my true story is never forgotten, and tell me your favorite song of mine in the comments.